Welcome to the screencast Solving Two-Step Equations. In this screencast, you will learn how to solve two-step equations by using inverse operations. To solve equations, you need to think about these three questions before you put pencil to paper and actually solve. What is the variable? What operation is performed on the variable, or rather, what are you doing to the variable? And then what is the inverse operation? Now, the inverse operation undoes something. So for instance, addition undoes subtraction, division undoes multiplication. So let's look at our first example. 2x plus 6 equals 2. So as we go through our thought organizer, our first question is, what is the variable? The variable is x. Now, what operation is performed on the variable? That's not exactly the right question to ask anymore, because we have more than one thing happening. So a better question is, what operations are being performed on the variable according to the order of operations, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So as I look at our equation, we have a multiplication and we have an addition. There's no parentheses. So the first operation that's being performed is multiply, and we're multiplying by 2. The next operation is adding 6. So now we need to think about our inverse operations. To undo multiply, you divide. To undo addition, you subtract. But before we begin to solve, we need to consider truly what inverse operations do. So let's think of the simple example of putting on shoes and socks. So here you have a foot. The first thing we do is put on the sock. The next thing we do is put on the shoe. If we were truly going to try to undo this and get back to our bare foot, would we take off the sock first? No, that does not make any sense. What we would have to do is first take off the shoe and then take off the sock. So what we end up doing is our operations in the inverse or reverse order. So how does that apply to solving an equation? Well, it means first we subtract 2 and then we divide by 2. So if we multiply by 2 to get our equation, you're going to divide by 2, but that's the last thing you're going to do. When we are adding 6, to undo the add 6, we'll subtract 6, but that's going to be the first thing that we do. And this tells us exactly how to solve the equation. Our first job is to subtract 6. Our second job is to divide by 2. So let's look at subtract 6. And we'll subtract 6 from both sides. When you combine your like terms on the left-hand side, and then when you combine your like terms on the right-hand side, we will get 2x equals -4. So we have successfully subtracted 6. Our next job is to divide by 2. So we divide by 2 on both sides of the equal sign. And again, when we simplify, we get x equals -2. And x equals -2 is our answer. Let's take a look at our next example. We're going to solve 3 times the quantity x minus 5 equals -6. So what's the variable? Our variable is x. what operation is being performed on the variable. We actually have multiple operations, 2 operations. So let's ask a better question. What operations are being performed on the variable according to the order of operations? So I see the parentheses. That's the first thing that we're doing. So inside the parentheses, we're subtracting 5. And then we're multiplying by 3. So the inverse operation, we're first going to divide by 3, and then we're going to add 5. And that is how you solve the equation. So let's first divide both sides by 3. When we simplify, we'll get x minus 5 equals negative 2. Our next job is to add 5 to both sides. And we get x equals 3. And x equals 3 is our answer. So, in the screencast, you're supposed to learn how to solve 2-step equations by using inverse operations. And that was solving 2-step equations.